When I was in seminary, we studied for a semester in Jerusalem, and it was really the highlight for many of us. The challenge, though, is shortly after we were there was an intifada that broke out. You might remember in the fall of 2000, Ariel Sharon went down to the Temple Mount, and that really ignited months of war, of battles, and so the old city literally emptied out. We had it, and some of our brothers and their families wanted to go home. I was joking with a classmate of mine who was here visiting on vacation. I said, I don't think my family even knew I was gone. As the youngest of 9, you just kind of, is Dan somewhere this fall? So in any event, it was an extraordinary time. And I remember Sister Paul Therese, who was one of my favorite professors and teachers at St. Paul Seminary of happy memory. She came along with the dean, Jean McLean, and she asked us all to share, we had one-on-one visits with her, share the spiritual image that's most present to you during this time in Jerusalem. And what I responded to was light. That was the image that was most prominent, most pressing upon me, particularly the contrast to all of the violence that was going on. For the month of November in Jerusalem, there was not a cloud in the sky. It literally was a blue sky every single day. And we could hear the gunfire, and we saw Father Pat Quinn was down where a bomb had gone off, and thankfully no one was injured. All of that was happening around us, and yet nothing but a brilliant blue sky and light. And what it conveyed to me is the abiding presence of God amidst the challenges of our modern day. Times where we do not become people of light. God always continues to be present, bidding us to join Him, to join His divine presence. Today, friends, as I said at the outset, we celebrate Epiphany in Rome. Pope Leo celebrated the second Sunday of Christmas, and then he'll celebrate Epiphany on the 6th, bringing the Jubilee year to a close, and I'll have a word about that in a minute. We celebrate the divine manifestation, specifically as Christians, God's revelation to all nations in His incarnate Son. We celebrate that with great joy. And this is a manifestation of divine love, of divine peace, and also of divine light. The celebration of Epiphany is bound up with the imagery of light. The first reading from Isaiah says this, and it was proclaimed very well, by the way. Thank you. Rise up in splendor, Jerusalem, your light has come, the glory of the Lord shines upon you. And of course we know it's a star that guides the Magi to the manger, right? They're attentive. Now, who were the Magi? Well, biblical scholars say they were likely not royalty. They weren't kings. They were likely wise men, learned men, who had a particular facility for astronomy, and they would have advised a particular king or royalty. And so they come following the star in Bethlehem of Judah. And we understand that light is very present. Now, we also understand that there's a contrast, a stark contrast between Herod and how God comes into the world. Pope Leo talks about God's incarnation using the phrase, the logic of littleness. And I noted on Christmas that his story is also surprising. He came from relative obscurity to become Pope. And so the logic of littleness presents our God who enters into the world, as he says, unarmed and unarming, entering into our humanity as a vulnerable child. This is extraordinary. This is an extraordinary part of our faith, friends. And it calls us to humility as well. So contrast that with Herod, right? Darkness. He's plotting Now, Herod's official title was King of the Jews. So when he hears the announcement that there is another King of the Jews, he thinks that someone's vying for his power. And so not only plotting, but we ultimately know murderous as well, rooted in insecurity and rooted in darkness. So the stark contrast between dark and light. Now, Pope Leo also noted the contrast of light and darkness in his message for the World Day of Peace. And if you get a chance to go to the Google Vatican document, Pope Leo's message. Also, his homily is fantastic as well, really beautiful. And this is what Pope Leo says. The contrast between darkness and light is not only a biblical image describing the labor pains of a new world being born, it is also an experience that unsettles us, that affects us amid the trials we face in our historical circumstances. He goes on, in order to overcome the darkness, it is necessary to see the light and believe in it. This is a call that Jesus' disciples, all of us, are invited to live in a unique and privileged way, yet it also finds its way into every human heart. The call to see the light and believe in it. So friends, as I conclude, how do we respond to God's manifestation 2,000 years ago in his infant son, right? Our Redeemer being born into human history, into our humanity. Well, first of all, I think we respond like the letter to the Ephesians by being stewards of grace. What is the grace in our lives, including the grace of the church, the grace of one another? To be stewards, good stewards of that grace in our lives. Paul exhorts us to that. Also, to heed the wise words of our universal shepherd, Pope Leo, to look for the light, to discern between light and darkness. It's not always apparent. And the beautiful Catholic spiritual tradition gives us wonderful ways for discernment, including Ignatian spirituality. And then once we see it, to believe in the light. And as we conclude the Jubilee year, right, our motto was hope does not disappoint, right? It's a biblical truth. So maybe we didn't have the profound renewal that we were seeking in this year. Maybe we did. God's invitation is perennial to enter into his light to be transformed. And finally, we can respond like the Magi. They were curious. They were humble. They were courageous. That was quite a journey to make, right? Danger, right, in that journey. And they were faithful, right? They responded to the message in a dream. And like the Magi, we can pay homage and tribute and praise to our incarnate Lord Jesus Christ.